All right, we're on. Hi, I'm Art Fein. I guess we won't start it now. I'm Art Fein. This is the large poker party coming to you from, where are we? Hollywood, California, on a beautiful day in February, with some mighty special guests and some mighty unusual stuff. We got first time in ever at this program. We got Tav Falco. Tav?
How do you do?
It's cool to see you here. Tav's playing around town. Tav's a Memphian of world renown that we got for the first time on the show. And Tav's going to be showing parts of the Panther Burns, of course, is his band. And wait a second, let's plug some product here. If you're in France, you may be able to pick this up. And selected import shops around the country too. Right now there's no. What is this, by the way? Oh, records are falling out. This is a.
It's a box set of 4 45 RPM records, a numbered edition of 5,000, limited numbered edition.
What number is this one? This is of how many?
5,000.
Oh, so this is number 559. Get the whole set. This has some individual things in it. Actually, there's another Memphian that had a box set recently. That was Elvis, wasn't it?
Perhaps so. I'm not familiar with his, current releases, posthumous releases.
So a bunch of 45s coming in the Tav Falco and Panther Burns 45. Is it an EP set? Is there 2 songs on a side?
No, 1 song on each side. It's actually the old, single format where each record has to stand alone with just two numbers to carry it through.
And we also have, what label's that on, by the way? That's on New Rose.
New Rose Frenzy being the label of the Panther Burns in Memphis. And this is a collaboration type release with New Rose, who we've been working with for about 3 years now.
And then the thing on your left is also the Panther Burns. Is it under Panther Burns? Tav Falco's Panther Burns CD, something we haven't seen much of in bands that I know.
Yes, we're rather pleased with this CD and rather surprised when New Rose asked us about releasing a CD and compiling some of our earlier releases on that label along with our current album release, The World We Knew. So this CD contains another record, Sugar Ditch Revisited, and The World We Knew, and 2 bonus tracks, plus an 18-page booklet with photographs and commentary generated by Panther Burns, paralleling each song.
Are there pictures suitable for framing?
Some of them, yeah. You can put them in these, small desktop frames if you like, or you can put them in a little frame that you put on your, watch band. Now, there's small photographs there in the CD.
Or a locket, right?
Yeah, a locket. They're locket size, no question about it.
One of those cubes. By the way, excuse me, this is Dave Stuckey. We haven't had Dave in before either. Welcome, Dave.
Oh, it's an honor and a pleasure, Art. Let me tell you.
Nice chapeau.
Nice clock.
Thank you. Normally, we wouldn't have the clock because it ticks so loudly, but wait till you hear the noise coming up in a minute. You won't even notice the ticking. Anybody think we've been on 3 minutes?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay. I like to.
So this is two releases.
Correct.
Contained in the CD.
Correct, and this is the locket size
Real still.
photograph that you can cut these out and place them in your lockets close to your body.
Right. Fine photos they are too.
Thank you.
All right, so now just to make this more complicated, we're going to flip on. What are we going to see, Tav? What is going to be behind us?
This is kind of a background image bed of camera vignettes that we've shot over the last year and a half in 16 millimeter. Panther Burns have done some global traveling here in the last year or so, and we've taken this black and white 16 millimeter footage as we've made these travels. So we would like to just go ahead and project this material in a casual way.
Yeah.
In the background and kind of get the motion picture sound, going for us.
There is no sound.
I hear it. It's coming in. Yeah, well, just the sound of the projector.
Oh, this is a motion picture sound.
Right. This is the industrial sound of motion pictures.
So this is a lot like being in a class in school.
And, yeah, or where they're making films or projecting films.
I wonder if they can see that at home. Well, I hope so. If not, they could hear it.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's just about as good.
Good stuff. Now, Tav, I don't know if you know the story.
No, tell me.
Try to what?
Try to make sure you get that mic in because we're in trouble now.
It's nice.
We're in deep cement right now.
I don't know. I love the story of the legend of the Panther Burns. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
No.
You want to tell him that whole thing?
Well, sure. Panther Burns, where we got our name for our band, is actually a location, a plantation in Mississippi. And the legend that I've heard around Memphis surrounding this plantation is that at the turn of the century, when they were clearing a lot of land in the Delta for cultivation, this particular farming community located at the southern end of the Delta, the Mississippi Delta, at that time were having a lot of wild panthers and bears and so forth being displaced from their natural environment around there due to all this land being cleared. So these animals began to prey on the community in the countryside where they no longer had food, they no longer had their own environment to live in. They were like that was taken away from them, stripped away. So they were foisted upon scavenging, reduced to scavengers around the community. But there was this one critter that kept harassing the community in the countryside. This one cunning panther, sort of a leftover of like an earlier time, kind of like Faulkner's bear. His story about the bear, the last sort of really wild bear in Mississippi. Well, this particular panther began to raid the chicken coops and howl all night and keep people up, and so they started to track the animal down, and they tried to shoot it, and they kept missing it. They tried to trap the panther. They kept eluding their traps. One night, though, they ran this animal into a canebrake, a stand of wild cane or bamboo that grows in Mississippi, and they set the canebrake on fire. And the location from then on became known as Panther Burns because of the shrieks of the animal, and the whole image and the whole happening there was so intense. Place to this day is still known as Panther Burns. Right. It's still a plantation with a plantation house, small farming community there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great genesis
That's
for a
cool.
band name, huh?
Yeah.
We thought it was a fitting metaphor for a band from Memphis.
Great.
The name.
Okay, I got another Genesis thing. Actually, when you talk, you're going to have to sort of keep your, because of that, you're going to have to keep your head locked to this position, I think, pretty much to make sure we catch as much as we can. Yeah. Now, I was playing Tobacco Road by John D. Loudermilk.
Love it.
Have you heard his version?
Of course, I've played it in Panther Burns now and again, and we try to be fairly faithful to John D. Loudermilk's treatment, not the later Nashville teen stuff and the other big
Lou
bands.
Rawls had it too, didn't
he? Yeah, a lot of people have done that song. It's a wonderful tune. Yeah. We like to keep it real stark and minimal and lush, the way John D. Loudermilk had it done.
Huh. Okay, well, this is a genesical comment then on that I realized recently that there's a place called Tobacco Row outside of Nashville, and if you listen to that song, he says Tobacco Row. You see, it's filthy, but I know Tobacco Row.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing that rhymes with a D in that whole song. And
I didn't realize that.
And I'll bet, oh, there goes the film. I'll bet that when they introduced the song to RCA, they said, change it to Tobacco Road. It's at least something people have heard.
Sounds right.
No doubt, no doubt, yeah.
Ties in, of course, with the famous exploitation movie, I don't know if you've ever seen the Hillbilly, The Girl from Tobacco Row. You ever seen that?
Girl from Tobacco Road?
Row.
No, I didn't.
So that's the whole tie-in, you know.
Well, there was a play on Broadway for a number of years, a long-running play, Tobacco Road. It was the Erskine Caldwell adaptation or something, and then the motion picture with Ward Bond, which is really kind of a grand motion picture. I loved it. You know, it's really funny. It's somewhat exploitative of all the myths of the South, you know, in that Erskine Caldwell fashion, but it's good. It's entertaining. It's pretty good.
Yes.
Now, Panther Burns, you and Panther Burns have been around since the late 70s?
Well, we started in '79 playing in cotton lofts in Memphis, Tennessee. Cotton lofts, which are these cotton warehouses on Front Street. Now it's kind of an historical district in Memphis, but Memphis is built on a bluff, you know, like Chuck Berry's song, Memphis, Tennessee, High on the Bluff.
Right.
Well, on this bluff overlooking the Mississippi River are these cotton buildings where the surrounding 3 states would bring in their cotton from Arkansas and Mississippi, bring it in on the wagons, take it into Memphis to these cotton brokers, and they would store the cotton in these warehouses, and they had a lot of skylights and natural lighting in there for grading the cotton and grading it in different grades. I mean, the best cotton in the world is grown in that area, the longest staple cotton. And so these buildings were beginning to be abandoned in the late 70s, and Panther Burns and some guerrilla tactics just sort of moved in on these buildings and started having our shows there, along with, we had Jim Dickinson and Mudboy and the Neutrons on the first show with Panther Burns, and then the next one was Charlie Feathers. He came down and played with us in the Cotton Loft.
Wow.
Brought his whole family down, Bubba Feathers on guitar. It was fantastic. Wanda was there.
Yeah, wow.
And the third show, we had Van Zula Hunt, a lady blues singer who used to work with Bessie Smith, touring in the Royal American shows back in the 30s. In 1929, she recorded in Memphis a single called Jelly Selling Woman, or this is 78. Still does that song really rather well.
That's great.
And the Memphis Jug Band backed her up. Noah Lewis played on it. She worked with us, and Most Benson, the early piano player, also was on that show. He is an octogenarian now, and he's still playing piano around Memphis in a very early cat house style of piano playing. And Van Zula Hunt is still there, singing just like she did when she was 19. It's amazing.
Okay, but you guys, I'm more interested in you guys than the roster, really. So how did you get out of Memphis? I mean, you've been all around the world now, and people are making your records in France, and everybody knows about you all over the globe.
Well, in order to get a little known out in the world for our music and to get the Panther Burn beat out there, Panther Burns had to leave Memphis. We had to make trips out of Tennessee. So our first trip was down to New Orleans, opening for the Cramps in 1980, and that was a fairly large event of some magnitude. And we made an impact right away in New Orleans on that first show. And in fact, our guitar player now in Panther Burns, George Reinecke, was there at the first show, and our performance kind of turned his bread around. And 3 years later, he joined the band, playing guitar. We also felt we needed to go, to New York, which we did in 1980. Again, we opened for the Cramps on our very first performance in New York City. And then we decided to go back. We met a lot of people there who were open to our music, bands like DNA, experimental groups who you might think might not see any kind of parallel with their own work in Panther Burns, but who really did see something there that they wanted to have more of in New York. So we were able to go on TV Party, a cable TV show in New York at the time, Chris Stein's TV Party, and got pretty well known up there through that TV show. And then started playing engagements at CBGB's and Mud Club and places like that. And all of a sudden, some people from Rough Trade were at one performance we did at Danceteria about 4 in the morning one weekend night, and decided that they'd like to have a record out on Panther Burns. The next day, they came over to where we were staying, and we decided to do our first album, Behind a Magnolia Curtain.
Now, by that time, you'd already put out that first EP, right?
Well, that was our 7-inch record, and that helped a lot. That's the only record that we have really produced with our own resources ourselves. It's a Frenzy record. It's Frenzy 2000, and it's a 7-inch 4-song EP.
Sure, yeah.
We screen printed the record jackets on that at our pad in Memphis, and the band actually screen printed the labels too. To the record, and we pressed 700 of those.
Yeah, and it was I remember it's kind of an odd-sized sleeve. I got it out the other day.
It was an oversized sleeve, and
so, it assured you of sticking out in those bins.
Oh, it doesn't fit anywhere, right?
It's an 8-inch sleeve, and it just didn't fit anywhere. 7-inch record inside of it.
Now, who was in the band at that point? Because I know Dateless Night and some of those early Drop Your Mask and all that was on that record.
Right, which we have recut because that record got so little circulation, and those songs appear on the World We Knew collection of songs, our second album. Recut, new treatments.
Yeah.
Now, the first treatments were recorded in these cotton lofts I described to you, these large wooden rooms with a lot of glass windows, and then in a couple of back rooms in Midtown Memphis. In the band at that time was the original Panther Burn drummer, Ross Johnson, who is recording to this day with Panther Burns and making certain selected shows in Europe and in places in the South. He's doesn't get out of Memphis very often at all. He has severe anxiety attacks when he gets 100 miles away from Memphis, so we try to keep him, as insulated as we can. He's a marvelous drummer, someone that's totally sort of self-evolved on drums and has his own particular style. We had Eric Hill on synthesizer. Panther Burn started out without a bass. We started out with a keyboard synthesizer, a very a synthesizer that Eric Hill did not even know how to play. I mean, he knew nothing about music or chords or, even a key change. He played with his fists, and he got a real good feel on like Train Kept a Rolling and Drop Your Mask, playing the synthesizer in that fashion.
Playing the bass lines on the synthesizer, right?
All
More or
kinds
less,
of lines, all kinds of real frantic, like cobweb things,
Right.
And then we had Alex Chilton at the time, another co-founder of the band, worked with us for several months there in the beginning, helping get the band off and turning us on to a lot of rock and roll licks when we were coming from a blues background primarily, or at least I was.
Yeah.
And Alex was pretty much a devotee of the Headless Chicken school of guitar playing at that time. And
I beg your pardon?
because he was
Come again?
a devotee at that time of the Headless Chicken school of
Headless
guitar
Chicken.
playing.
There's nothing to do with Greasy Chicken by Andre Williams. This is Headless Chicken.
It's
Only
connected a little bit,
you know?
probably aesthetically, to the Greasy Chicken.
And you actually use a Headless Chicken to play, like a bottleneck?
Well, no, but we were, around some Headless Chickens at that time.
You can
And
use
we
one
got
that
we
really
got to
slows
know
you down. That's-
we got to know how that works. In fact, some friends of ours, Bill Eggleston, were doing some videotapes with. In fact, he hired someone in New Orleans one night making a videotape down there, a geek from the circus, and he got him to pull the chicken's head off. Yank the chicken's head off with his mouth.
Wow. Holy
In this
mackerel.
videotape. This whole thing is collected in a group of tapes called Stranded in Canton, which are being re-released now through the Art Network.
That's great.
Yeah, it's an interesting group of tapes. Panther Burns were involved in that. Some of the manifestos we were doing at that time
You were doing manifestos.
were involved in Bill Eggleston's videotapes. That's back when I was...
Can just anyone do a manifesto? Or
Of course.
Manifest, I know you get in a shipping bill, I know.
Yeah,
But
that's
a
right.
manifesto is a Spanish shipping bill?
That's it. Yeah.
But that's,
It's just kind of a list of statements posited,
all right.
Yeah.
Well,
And
so much for
there's
the
our
movie.
audio
We're
visual
gonna
show.
We're going to miss that sound.
We are.
Okay,
Everything
everything.
would be a nice kind of white noise thing.
Uh,
Until now.
It's
Well,
just a
Tav-
projector coming down, friends. It'll be
Tav-
back up momentarily.
We're saving this for Dick Clark's bloopers.
That's it.
This is one of those funny mistakes that happens. So anyhow, you can talk about the Memphis scene there, because I mean,
Yeah.
this is a question sort of like, are there any more at home like you? In Memphis, is there an active musical scene?
An active musical scene? Sure, there's an active musical scene in Memphis. I think, like Sam Phillips said, Memphis will always be a place for innovation. And Nashville's got a beautiful thing going. It's a music center. It's a commercial center. But Memphis is a little more underground.
Mm-hmm.
And it's had its periods of active labels there. At this time, we really don't have record labels as we once did in Memphis, other than Frenzy and a couple of non-scheduled labels like Frenzy. So people look at Memphis today and they say, well, how active is Memphis? Well, our recording and our labels there are not very active perhaps because of the label abuse during the days of Stax Records and other things there. But the music itself exists in Memphis today, and I think there will always be interesting music coming out of Memphis because of connection with Mississippi and Arkansas and the whole region there. The identity of Memphis music is really the rural music that has come into the city.
Yeah.
And that's what's made the so-called Memphis sound, that real lazy, laid back, behind the beat kind of groove
Right.
that happens in Memphis. And the gorgeous singing from the black culture there is our contribution. And bands like ours just stand in the shadow of like the black music of Howlin' Wolf and Fred McDowell and Aretha Franklin and all the greats. I mean, how can you not be affected by that?
Sure. Well, how much of the new bands, or maybe old timers that are still playing, how much of it still is traditionally rooted? I mean, talking about that underground scene, is there a lot, or are you guys?
There are bands there who are paying attention to the earlier forms, and then there are some newer groups who are also attempting to cop something out of the rest of the world's music scene and apply that to their own lives in Memphis. I mean, we have bands like the Hellcats, the girl group, a new group in Memphis, who are out on Frenzy New Rose. We'll have Lorette Velvet come in just a moment and say a few words to us. She's here in the studio from the Hellcats, of a new record out called Cherry Mansions. They are working in the blues and early rock and roll genre and early like jazz type jump blues genre. Mm-hmm. They're unusual though in Memphis for working in that way, kind of like Panther Burns are. A lot of the rock and roll bands, outright rock and roll bands, might be 60s and 70s influenced, and then are sort of reviving the early 80s too in what they do. Bands like the Neon Wheels, which I think are really hard rockers and really good performers. We have some other groups, the Jim Duckworth Band, Canine Arts, who are playing in a more contemporary context, a more experimental context. He played in Panther Burns for a time. Right. We have blues bands now of young to middle-aged blues artists coming out of Mississippi playing in a Muddy Waters type tradition. That's nice. Yeah. Which the Hollywood Blues Band, as a matter of fact, the Hollywood All-Stars, they call themselves, playing directly out of the Mississippi, Clarksdale, Mississippi Muddy Waters tradition. Fantastic blues group. You have another band called the Fieldstones, all-black blues group, who are a little more mainstream, kind of, you can even apply that to blues, but a little more, not quite as country as the Hollywood All-Stars.
Let's talk Panther Burns a little more. We'll be out of here in 5 minutes. So you guys have been playing around L.A. a little bit this month of February. Yeah,
we've played more dates here than we ever have in the past. We've come out here a few times, and we started out here too, opening for the Cramps.
I saw that on Halloween.
Yeah, it was a Halloween
81.
show at Devonshire Downs with Vampira, and it was a groove, and that was our first exposure here in Los Angeles, and then we went on and played a show at Cathay de Grand right afterward. We came out here off and on and played for Brendan over at Lingerie Club, and now we've played at the Music Machine here in town, and Raji's. We did another show in Long Beach, and we just are grooving on the vibes here and the climate so much, and and it seems like Los Angeles is showing such a benign face to us at the moment that we want to bring the band back into town, and we're booking some more shows for Panther Burns.
So we'll keep an eye on the Palomino ad and the Central ad.
The Central, yeah, and just a whole array of places we intend to infiltrate.
You can't do a loft. You can't do a cotton loft here.
Well, we're going to have something similar at the 01 Gallery. We're going to screen our 2 Panther Burn movies, one of which was directed by Richard Ploeger, filmmaker from Berlin, who's here in the studio running the projector for us today.
He does that too.
Yes.
Director and projector operator.
Projectionist. We have the Panther Burn Red film, which we've been showing some excerpts from here in the studio. And we have our color movie, Shade Tree Mechanic, 10-minute film done in Memphis by Richard last October. And before we run out of time, can we bring Lorette up here and have her say a few words about the Hellcats?
Well, this is Lorette Velvet. Explain yourself.
First of all, I want to tell you that big thump you heard was my hair got caught in the projector.
Wow!
It started reeling it in, and I jerked back.
That's like one of those industrial accidents you always hear about so much. Yeah,
that's great. Wow. I wish we caught that.
You all right now? Everything okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
Got my hair out of there.
So if people want to see the rest of that film, they'll have to go to the 01.
Is that right? Yeah. Red film will be screened there as well as...
Yeah, both films. It's going to be like a 2:30 a.m. late night type screening of the film. We'll be sending out announcements, so watch for these announcements. It's going to be kind of word of mouth and invitation type action.
We could use a little more light, Richard, I think.
Open that up.
But anyways, tell us about the Hellcats, if that's what you'd like to do.
Yeah, the Hellcats. Well, we're a group in Memphis, 6 girls. And we just released a 6-song EP on New Rose. It's called Cherry Mansions. That should be out here very soon. And we're going to be doing some touring with the Panther Burns. Maybe going to Australia this year.
Oh, terrific.
Great.
we went down last year and to Australia and played a month there. In fact, '87 was the first year Panther Burns ever left this part of the world, North America. In fact, you know, we've sold more records in Europe
I mean, you just
and
recently
Australia
left
than
this.
yeah, we've never
continent?
really been out of the States other than Canada. In fact, there was a long period where booking agents wouldn't even touch Panther Burns for some bizarre reason. I guess they thought we were bizarre. But now they're beginning to come around and see that, you know, their audiences do enjoy Panther Burns, even
So
in
where
our
did
more
you-
peculiar manifestations.
Where did you go on the European tour?
Well, we went to 6 European countries. We landed in London and played there, and then went to Holland and Switzerland and Germany and Italy, and then we played in Paris and other parts in France, and it was all very breathtaking. It was like 27 cities in 31 days. And
Were you lugging a semi behind you with the equipment?
no, we lugged this projector all the way around those countries, though, and we showed our films, and it was pretty smooth running tour, actually. We want to bring the Hellcats with us next time. Those Memphis girls who ride their men as hard as they ride their motorcycles. And I know everyone over there is looking forward to seeing them, and I think people out here will really be looking forward to seeing
Well,
them
this will
too.
run in New York at some time in the future. You have any New York dates set up?
Well, we're talking to the world in New York. We've played for those guys several times who run the place when they had Peppermint Lounge up there. And we're attempting to set up a date at the World around the end of March. So we'll be taking off from New York and landing in Europe then for our first engagement March 30th. So around the end of March we intend to do a performance at the World. We do have a show in Austin in mid-March and a benefit for WEVL Radio.
Wait a second, I'm distributing this in Austin too. When is the Austin date?
Okay, this is a conference, the South
Oh, we
by
got about 30 seconds.
Oh, the South by Southwest Conference appearing
Oh, yeah.
like March 14th or so in Austin, and Panther Burns will be on there Saturday night. Then we'll be playing a benefit in Memphis for WVL Radio March 19th. Then we'll be going up to New York for a while. So, but really right now we're grooving out here, and we're really enjoying it. I think I might even buy a Lambretta to get around town here with a sidecar for Lorette. And
Not for you.
Lorette's going to drive.
Lorette's
you know.
driving, all right.
She drives us most everywhere.
Okay, well, thanks. Welcome to our fair city, and we're glad to have you here. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lorette. Thanks, Tav. Thanks, Dave.
It's our pleasure.
We didn't get you to talk enough.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
Enjoyed it, Dave.
coffee.
yeah, that's cool. Where do you get that chapeau?
I got a rack of them at home.
Oh, man.
Buy them downtown.
Bring them on,
I
man.
got to get one of those.